The psychological thriller All the President's Men is based on true events of the Watergate scandal during the Nixon presidency. As seen throughout the movie, the two main characters, Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, play pivotal roles in slowly uncovering evidence that eventually precipitated with Nixon's resignation on August 8, 1974. Due to the extremely sensitive nature of the subject matter, the movie maintains a steady sense of tension and suspense, despite being hugely limited on the amount of possible variability within the plot. What I want to highlight in this analysis is how crafty cinematic effects influence the overall spectacle of the film. A film, by the way, about one of the most historically significant series of events to happen in the 20th century. After the typewriter is finished pounding out the date June 1st, 1972, the audience is immediately plopped into the intense spectacle of the presidency. Although nothing particularly significant occurs on this day in history, it marks a day when the Nixon presidency was relatively free of corruption. Also worth noting is that this movie progresses chronologically, and to an extraordinary degree it actually depicts a series of events as they occurred in real life. Throughout the movie, the use of historically significant videos, as seen in this slide, and the constant use of silent space is a testament to the minimalist style that the filmmakers clearly took a liking to. Also noteworthy is the tone of the reporter's voice. The sense of awe and amazement that he embodies draws sharp attention to the sense of excellency that surrounds the presidency. Cleverly tied into the opening sequence is the dramatization of the Watergate break-in. Playing on the show of excellency displayed in the previous scene, the viewer's senses are heightened as the events begin to unfold. An almost completely silent scene is peppered with quiet sounds of a burglar picking a lock. The scene goes from pitch black to, the top left, a dimly backlit scene with silhouettes of the alleged burglars in the background. The sense of position is alluded to in the bottom slide as the camera snaps into a high-angle view of the Watergate office building from the outside. Also worth mentioning is the startling use of sharp and sudden sounds in an otherwise silent soundscape. Again, this is a very common theme utilized by the directors in an attempt to put the viewer in the exact frame of mind that the characters would find themselves in. Prefaced with an argument about the credibility of the two journalists, this scene unfolds the first meeting of Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. This scene builds up a palpable tension between the two reporters that, although unfortunately isn't revisited, it does display the professionalism exhibited by each of the two men. Woodward drops off something to be edited, and twice an uninvited Bernstein picks up his work and starts editing it himself. Something I'd like to focus on, however, is the camera positioning at the beginning of the scene. As you can see in the top left, this starts with a medium close-up of Woodward punching away on his typewriter. As he stands up to drop off his first piece of work, the camera just pivots to track him closely, and although you can't see it from this set of stills, when he walks back to his seat, the camera actually repositions itself, a move that would normally be used to emphasize motion. However, Woodward sits down, and you can now see in the bottom frame that Bernstein is now in the background. Also note that almost half of the next three shots, as seen here, is filled with the building's support columns. Yet another trick to help put the audience in the room, seeing exactly what each man sees. Thematically, this scene plays an important role for a number of reasons. It shows both men in the office doing exactly what they do on any other day of the week, and it establishes the cordial and professional relationship between the two journalists. This earns each man a token of respect by the audience by showing that not only they're good journalists, but that they can deal with each other despite some rather shady tactics. The final few scenes I'd like to analyze are Woodward's meetings with his confidential informant, codenamed Deep Throat. Each scene emphasizes the strange and dynamic relationship between the two men, but they also use slightly different cinematic effects to illustrate the progression of the movie's rather dense plot. Fast forward to the dimly lit abandoned parking garage, and the mood is tense. The suspense is built up by compounding filming aspects, extremely low-key lighting, and wide-angle shots mainly. I thought it was particularly clever how Deep Throat signaled his whereabouts to Woodford in the top frame by flicking his lighter open and barely exposing his silhouette beside a completely unlit support column. As the conversation between the two men progresses, it's clear that Woodward is going to have to really work to get the information out of a source. This scene also plays an important role in building the feel of suspense throughout the entire movie. Also note the narrow band of light illuminating Deep Throat's eyes. Yet another tactic utilized by the producers to play upon his mysterious and intimidating character. So this is the second meeting with Deep Throat. Not a whole bunch of difference between the first and last scene of them meeting, but I thought it was interesting that here you can tell that they've illuminated his face a lot more than in the first and last meetings, which I think plays towards the fact that Woodward is just getting to know him better and they're exchanging a lot more information. It could be some other representation of that fact. So here's the third meeting. In the top frame, you see Woodward kind of walking into the dark abyss, which I thought that was a pretty interesting tactic. And then yet again we have Deep Throat, but now his face is illuminated quite a bit less than the first two scenes. The third scene is fundamentally similar to the previous ones, but again there are key differences. The intensity of the movie is at an all-time high, and like I mentioned, Deep Throat's face is at an all-time low. And also, Woodford is done playing Deep Throat's, quote, chicken shit games and demands real answers. After this conversation, the feeling of the mood really takes a turn. Up until now, it's pretty intense, but no bit of information has really changed the way that the journalist approached the story, but now Deep Throat says, quote, your lives are in danger. Now, although the pacing of this movie was patient and incremental, the final development brings the movie to a level only experienced in action films. Low-key lighting and suspenseful horror movie-like music and tricky camera movements have all slowly built up the movie's intensity, but the setup and delivery of Deep Throat's final words to Woodward truly take the movie to another level. The movie ends on what I think to be a brilliant note. By not focusing extensively on the final developments of the case, the producers save the movie from coming across as drawn out and dull. Instead, the dim roar of the typewriter muddies up Nixon's second inauguration ceremony, and an extremely slow zoom draws the attention away from the TV in the foreground to the tireless journalists working away in the background. A truly remarkable ending that was only realized due to clever post-production editing and what I think to be a tasteful foresight on behalf of the movie's producers.